This episode of Mission Log is brought to you by Eagle Moss and the official Star Trek graphic novels collection. Get your first volume, Countdown, for only $4.95 when you sign up today at eaglemoss.com/missionlog.
This episode of Mission Log is also brought to you by Harry's. To get your free trial set, including a razor handle, 5-blade cartridge, and shave gel, go to harrys.com/missionlog. That's harrys.com/missionlog.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 230, Face of the Enemy.
Welcome into Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log, we watch an episode of Star Trek, taking it apart for messages and meanings, and seeing whether the whole thing holds up. This week, Face of the Enemy, the one where Counselor Troi becomes a Romulan major.
Also, shout out to Ambassador Spock. John, do the thing.
Whoa, what?
There you go. I'll be curious when we hit the end of Next Gen to see who gets more off-screen mentions, Spock or Gowron.
It's kind of a given. You mention Romulus, boom, Ambassador Spock. You mention a Klingon, you so much as get near a Klingon. You start a word that begins with KL, and somebody's going to shout Gowron. Yeah.
Mr. Wolf, send out a signal, I know Gowron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just on repeat.
Oh, pardon me, Captain. Here, you dropped this name. Let me pick it up for you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Indeed. John's got trivia coming up in just a moment, but first,
a word about the official Star Trek graphic novels collection from our friends at Eagle Moss.
For the first time ever, the best of 50 years of Star Trek comics have been brought together in this extraordinary new collection that spans 3 decades? No. 4 decades? No. 5 decades.
At least.
And features everything, from the first Star Trek comic to the latest adventures.
You know that I'm a collector. I might like to collect things from time to time. So it has been said. And here's the kind of collection that I like. All of these graphic novels are presented beautifully in brand new hardbound editions with specially commissioned introductions. The series features stories written by some of the most beloved writers in Star Trek history. And as I mentioned before, you even get stories written by actors that you wouldn't expect to have written graphic novels. Mark Leonard, Aaron Eisenberg, Will Wheaton, in addition to some of the most beloved Star Trek novelists like Peter David, Michael Jan Friedman, Alan Dean Foster, and Diane Duane.
There is secret history to Star Trek. A lot of people know this. I think there's actually a book about the history of Star Trek. There may even be 2 books about the history of Star Trek. I'm just not sure.
Could be.
One of the biggest things out there has always been how upset Harlan Ellison was with his original version of City on the Edge of Forever.
Wait, you're kidding?
I know, yeah.
I haven't heard this.
He keeps it kind of quiet.
Okay, all right.
He doesn't like to talk about it, except for the part where he will. You subscribe to the Star Trek graphic novels collection, you'll get City on the Edge of Forever. And this is not City on the Edge of Forever the way it was presented on screen. This is the one that Harlan Ellison, thinks they should have presented. There's drugs in this one. Drugs, I tells ya. Yeah. And you get movie adaptations and you get stories showing what happened, after the movies and around the movies. In fact, I'll tell you more about one of those in just a moment.
All the publishers are here, all of them, including Gold Key, Marvel, DC, Malibu, Paramount Comics, Wildstorm, Tokyo Pop, and the current holder of Star Trek IDW. Even those rarely seen British strips from the 70s. Check them out.
Now, you can start your collection today with Volume 1, Countdown, for $4.95, and that comes with free shipping. This is the story before J.J. Abrams' 2009 Star Trek movie, letting you in on the circumstances that drove Nero and Spock to travel back to the 23rd century from their comfy spots in the 24th. And, of course, doing that starts the whole Kelvin universe. And who doesn't love the... I like the Kelvin universe personally, but whatever. Bonus content includes the first Gold Key Star Trek comic book from 1967. Subsequent editions ship twice monthly and are delivered directly to your door. And, of course, you can cancel your subscription at any time. But then you're going to miss out on a lot more Star Trek.
For details on the entire collection, including a host of exclusive free gifts, and to order, visit eaglemoss.com/missionlog. That address again is eaglemoss.com/missionlog. And a huge thanks to Eagle Moss for sponsoring this week's show.
I said earlier that John has trivia coming up, and we will get to it. But first, I want to let you know how you can get in touch with us. Mission Log Pod is the address to find us on Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we would love to hear your voice. 323-522-5641 is the phone number to call. 323-522-5641. Our email address is missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our show website, including discovered documents, is at missionlogpodcast.com. And please do remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log. And now, that moment I mentioned a moment ago. Huh? It's John Champion's Trivia.
All right, Ken, trivia for Face of the Enemy. Now, the story was written by Renee Echeverria, the script by Naren Shankar. So two names that we know pretty well right now from writing Star Trek. But earlier on, Robert Hewitt Wolfe. Now, we talked about him when we were talking about his script for A Fistful of Datas. So Robert Wolfe had pitched a story where Picard, Data, and Troi would be the ones on a Romulan ship, but it would have been Q who put them there, and they would appear as fully Romulan to the rest of the crew. So we would see them as they normally look, but then they look in a mirror and then suddenly they're just full-on Romulan. It was a little too quantum leapish, so they didn't want to go that direction. I can see why.
Yeah.
Now, the episode is directed by Gabrielle Beaumont, and we really liked pointing out before that Gabrielle is the first woman to have a directing job on Star Trek. That was way back in season 3. I can't remember the episode. It was the one where, so the Enterprise finds a derelict ship, and the more they try to get away from it, the worse it gets. It was like a trap of some kind, and they were trapped.
Doesn't ring a bell.
No. All right. Moving on. Now, before today's episode, she had most recently directed Imaginary Friend. So, as you mentioned, we have a reference to Spock here. And at one time, the idea was played with to reference that Spock had died. And that idea was vetoed pretty quickly. Yeah.
That's really? Just like that?
Yeah. You'd think, just a little internal debate. Should we do this?
Yes. Ambassador maybe. Spock, how is he? Oh, he's dead. Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah, moving on.
Again?
So, there is a missing scene, which you can check out if you have the Blu-rays. It was right before Picard comes to visit with the defector Desev. We would have seen him trying to order a Romulan drink from the replicator and settling for coffee instead. It was a small moment, and it just showed Desev kind of alone and out of place. Now, let's talk about guest stars. We have Scott McDonald as Vec. Now, here's another actor you have seen or heard over and over again. He will be back at least once for each of the other Star Trek series, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. In fact, his Star Trek debut was in a minor role in an episode of Deep Space Nine that originally aired just a week prior to this episode. Face of the Enemy, then, is technically his first professional credited role. Now, Barry Lynch as Desev, a whole lot of TV guest appearances preceded this episode of Next Gen, and he was around for more, though not on TV. He featured in the video games Star Trek Klingon and Star Trek Klingon Academy, and he was in that Borg computer game that I could never get to work correctly. I think I've heard from listeners who also couldn't get it to work correctly either, so I know I'm not alone in that one. And finally, Commander Toreth. Interestingly, this was a character written as male, and they decided to bring back Carolyn Seymour, who we saw in the Season 2 episode Contagion, a different character name that time. She was also in First Contact, not the movie, but the episode First Contact as Marasta Yale. And don't forget that she has a lot of genre credits. Space 1999, a whole slew of appearances in the Star Wars universe, not just The Phantom Menace, but also games, and she'll be back for more Star Trek as well. Also, she was in one of the most important movies of the 20th century, Zorro, the Gay Blade. Now, interestingly, Joanne Linville, who played the Romulan commander in the original series episode, The Enterprise Incident, was considered for Commander Toreth, but the schedule didn't work out.
During this episode, a Romulan ship fires on the Enterprise. Of course, It is next gen, and it is the Romulans. So, nothing actually happens.
Prologue. We open in a dark, unfamiliar room. It's kind of Romulan looking, actually, and we hear the disoriented voice of someone familiar. It's Deanna Troi, and she is shocked to see in the mirror that she herself has been transformed into a Romulan. Act 1. Yep, it's a Romulan ship, all right, and it's Deanna, all right, but she has been physically transformed into a Romulan, shoulder pads and everything. She's visited by Sub-Commander Vec, who informs her that she is on a mission and is about to meet with Commander Toreth. Oh, and sorry about abducting her and forcing her into this, but it's vitally important. From now on, her cover will be Major Rakhal, part of the Romulan intelligence group Tal Shiar. Now, she better do as he says and give the order to the commander that they are supposed to change course for the Caleb sector, and that's all. If she messes this up, she could be killed. Just to impose certainty on it, Vec asks Deanna to use her empathic abilities to sense if he's telling the truth. He's not lying about the mission or her role in it. On the bridge of the Romulan warbird Kazara, Deanna, as Major Rakhal, meets Commander Toreth. It's a chilly reception. The commander doesn't seem too pleased to meet anyone who can give her orders, and she makes Deanna a tad uncomfortable, grilling her about the mission. She's not a fan of the Tal Shiar, nor of this new person, nor of the secret nature of this mission. Just what is the cargo they're beaming aboard? Deanna holds her own, though. Putting on her best tough Romulan face, she tells the commander it's none of her business, and she had better step on it to the Caleb sector. So they do. Act 2. Hey, it's the Enterprise, finally. Stopping off at Research Station 47. Oops. Oh, sorry. Nope, it's actually station number 75. To beam aboard a guest. He's not an ordinary guest, though. He's Ensign Desev, formerly of Starfleet, then playing for the opposite team when he joined the Romulans 20 years ago, and now he's coming home. Worf is ready to write him off as a traitor, Riker is chomping at the bit for a court-martial, and Beverly just wants to make sure he's okay. He did take a pretty big risk escaping the other side, after all. Desev wants to see Picard, and when he does, he explains what's going on. Ambassador Spock sent him with a message for Picard. The Enterprise is to go to the Caleb sector and meet a cargo ship carrying something very important that needs to be brought safely into Federation space. There's something more. Desev is remorseful over his time away. He had a moral crisis, seeing that the rigidity of the Romulan way of life wasn't sustainable for him. That's why he's back. Aboard the Kazara, Vec reveals their cargo to Deanna. It's people. More specifically, it's a top member of the Romulan Senate and 2 of his aides in stasis. They're headed to Starfleet by way of a hired cargo ship at the suggestion of Ambassador Spock. It's his hope that it will be a blow to the Romulan government, as well as a kind of underground railroad to help Romulans who want to escape. Oh, and by the way, Deanna is expected for dinner soon. Commander Toreth is hosting dinner for the senior officers, and she's back at it with Deanna, asking questions about her background, being maybe just a little bit suspicious about Major Rakhal's time in the Intelligence Academy. It gets personal when Toreth reveals that the Tal Shiar killed her own father. And Deanna counters, as only a Tal Shiar would, that he must have been a traitor. These two will have to fight it out later, though. The freighter they were hoping to meet in the Caleb sector is now in sight. The captain of that ship signals Toreth that they're ready to accept their cargo, but Deanna tells Vec that he's lying. They have no intention of delivering what they promise. Quietly, Vec engages the ship's controls and opens fire, destroying the cargo ship. He then tells Toreth that it was Major Rakhal who gave the order. Act 3. 18 people on that ship, all dead. Commander Toreth is just as outraged about that as she is that Major Rakhal, supposedly, gave an order over her authority. Deanna again fights back, saying that she has the authority through the Tal Shiar on this mission, and furthermore, she's now giving the order to engage their cloaking device. About that time, the Enterprise arrives in the Caleb sector, and yep, no freighter, no nothing. Picard asks Desev if he has any answers. He doesn't. He was just told this is where the freighter was supposed to meet them. He swears he's not lying. just going by the information he was given indirectly by Spock. And that freighter could have been from not too far away. They don't travel too fast. Deanna and Vec have hit a bit of a crisis. 18 people have died, and their plan to get their cargo into the right hands has collapsed. As a backup, Vec suggests that they get to the Federation base on Draken 4, and that's where it comes in handy that Deanna is actually Deanna and not actually a Romulan intelligence officer. All Vec needs now is Deanna to provide him with the codes to get past the Federation sensor net. Torith is a little shocked, to say the least, at this new plan. Flying their warbird into Federation space, Major Akal puts the commander in her place, though, assuring her that the Tal Shiar have obtained codes to pass through the Federation sensors. Grudgingly, Torith accepts the plan, not before stating that she thinks they'll all get killed and probably start a war. Just before they can get underway, a new ship arrives in visual range, and guess what? It's the Enterprise. Act 4. Well, that wasn't expected. No less, Torith thinks it's time to get out of there. They'll keep the cloak on and, fly casual. Back on the Enterprise, they're putting the pieces together. Definitely a Romulan disruptor that destroyed the freighters that used to be here. Well, at least Asev is somewhat in the clear now. Deanna confers with Vec. She thinks it's a good time to actually get in touch with the Enterprise. Really risky move, but it might be the only thing they can do to deliver their cargo. Vec is reluctant until Deanna finds some serious Romulan backbone. She dresses him down that she can have him revealed as a traitor, and, well, that jogs his mind suddenly. The engineer on board is a sympathizer and can possibly rig up a little breadcrumb trail for the Enterprise to follow. They'll misalign the nullified core, and that'll leave a magnetic trail for the, hey, Data just picked up some magnetic distortion moving slowly, then it's gone. Could it be a cloaked ship? Oh yeah, it's back again, then gone. There's an awfully good chance this is not just a naturally occurring oddity. In that case, the Enterprise will follow it, which makes the Romulan commander a little nervous. The cloaking device is working, right guys? Torith thinks she has a way to out-strategize the Enterprise. She'll head for the other ship as close as possible to come right up under them. If the Enterprise gets out of the way, it means the warbird can be seen, and if that's the case, Torith will destroy the Enterprise. Act 5. On the Enterprise, they aren't sure what's going on at all. Is it a suicide attack? Are they aware that the Enterprise can see them? Have they pulled any crazy Ivans yet? Picard gives the order to pull away, which is all Torith needs. She prepares for attack, but Deanna sees her opportunity as well. She outranks the commander and makes a play to remove her from the bridge. After all, the military commander is risking being attacked herself if the Enterprise is aware of them. That's an unwise decision by any measure. Torith is incensed, the very idea that her command would be challenged. But yeah, Deanna's got a point. If the Enterprise can see them even when cloaked, that means they're vulnerable. And to drive it home, Deanna takes command while threatening the lives and families of the other Romulan crew members. Torith does as she's told, and Deanna takes the big chair. The warbird decloaks, and it's all too perfect. On the view screen, there's Picard, and he's like, "Whoa, Deanna, so great to see you here. Why do you look like a Romulan?" Not really. He plays it totally cool. And she plays it cool, too. Sorry about the destroyed freighter, just an accident perpetrated by the former commander. Let's not allow things to get out of control here. How about you beam me aboard the Enterprise? Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Worf locks onto Deanna's position, ready to beam her aboard. They'll have to drop shields to do so, and when they do, Deanna gives an order to Vec to fire on the Enterprise. It's a puny shot, though, but in the melee, the Senator and his aides are beamed directly to the bridge. Nice little bit of diversion there. Except now that Torith is very suspicious. Why were their weapons ineffective? Why isn't Vec saying there's something wrong? And what was beamed over to the Enterprise? Aha! Torith assumes that Major Rakal is to blame, and Vec too, and she would be right. Torith has no weapon on her, and Vec pulls his disruptor to threaten her. Unfortunately for him, everyone on the bridge of that ship is armed to the teeth, and it's pretty easy to pick him off. Now it's Deanna's turn. Torith relishes the idea that she'll get information out of her about the cargo and about the conspiracy underfoot, and then she'll be executed. Just one thing, though. As soon as their shields are dropped and they prepare to go to warp, Deanna is safely beamed back aboard the Enterprise. All that plastic surgery to Major Rakal is now undone, and she looks way more like the Deanna Troi we know. The Senator and his aides are fine too, and although Vec was lost, there is hope that more Romulans can make their way out of the Empire. The end.
I hope I live to the 24th century.
Well, I do too, Ken, and me as well.
And you as well, yeah, just for the cosmetic surgery.
Oh man, yes.
I want to be a Romulan one day. I want to be a Klingon one day. I want to be a Vulcan one day.
Yeah.
I want like all assortment of like just things to the bridge of my nose. You know, I'll be Bajoran for like a day.
Yep. And then just a few minutes later, you just sit up off the hospital bed. And you're like, oh, boy, it feels good to be human again.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Cannot wait. Hey, what would you think if the story had featured Dr. Crusher instead of Deanna?
Well, she'd have to be psychic.
Yeah. That was one of the problems. So they thought about that. That was one of the other drafts. And they thought, you know what? We could use the empath here. You know, maybe they thought like, hey, remember all those episodes where we could have used an empath and we didn't remember that we had one?
Yeah.
Let's do that now. Yeah.
I'm curious about the conference that they were at, though, where there could be Romulans and Federation people. Because she's like, I was at this conference and then somebody hypoed me.
Yeah, right.
Was it a Romulan that did that? Or was it somebody who's like a Romulan sympathizer? And were they working for the underground, or they just think, aha, I'm working for the Romulans. I will hand over this, a Federation officer who apparently is going to the Romulans who actually want out of the Romulan Empire.
I'm just going to say that the conference was taking place in the 24th century equivalent of like Switzerland.
Okay.
And you had one of the Romulan underground contact somebody there to say, hey, we really need... No, here's what they did. They dropped a name. They said, hey, Ambassador Spock thinks it would be a great idea if we could get our hands on an empath.
All right. Since you're writing that, I say that does not count as one of the mentions that we're adding up now.
Okay. No, it does not.
I tell you, I like the fact that a few episodes ago, I guess when Jellicoe was there, Chain of Command, the one with Jellicoe, they put Troi in a uniform, but now it's like they're like, well, we'll put her in all the uniforms.
Yes, every week,
right?
Every week, new alien race, and we'll just put her in a
uniform. Yep, Klingon, Vulcan. We got a few more.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like the thing I did a few minutes ago with the with all the makeup, except now with uniforms.
And she carries it off well. Like we'll talk about this later, like her embodiment of the character, but I think once you put on the shoulder pads and you got the thing around the neck and you got that haircut and you just feel like, yeah, this really sells being Romulan. But here's the thing. All right. I will take back, not most, but I will take back some of what I said about the wallpaper and the Enterprise and those early seasons. I know I really came down hard on that. I think there is some majorly bad design going on in the Romulan ship. It's sort of like Memphis Design School, which should have stayed in the 80s where it came from. And this is it's just bad. They stopped looking like a fearsome enemy with giant shoulders, and they started looking like, kind of like a food court in a whimsical 80s mall.
I was going to say, it reminded me of a diner I used to go to in San Francisco.
Really?
That I went to in the late 90s. And then by the mid 2000s, they'd actually changed the look of it entirely. But it still had it had a similar design when I first got to San Francisco.
Well, I know that I think it was Naren Shankar who expressed some of his displeasure with the design, and I get it. It's just every alien race kind of has some base colors to help you identify and really thematically flesh out that race. But then the captain's chair on the Romulan ship. It's just like, well, here's this little arched chair. We need to make it alien. Put some balls on it. Okay, right. now it's an alien chair.
They could just borrow Worf's ball chair. Now that you mention it,
they could have. Just if you want to put balls on a chair, just
I gotta say though, the colors did pop on that bridge, and I know it may sound like I'm being funny, but TOS. I mean, like, had such bright, vibrant colors. And everything is very muted in Next Gen.
Like a good hotel lobby should be.
right. Yes, but I did notice how the colors popped actually on the Romulan bridge. And while it did feel kind of weird, like it should have been darker, it should have been, I don't know, tougher.
Less whimsical?
Yeah. Less whimsical, maybe, but at the same time, I did like it. Yeah, that Planet of Whimsy actually didn't have as much color as this did, except for that guy in the fishbowl head, but yeah. Yeah, I kind of appreciated the colors, though, honestly. But yes, I also knew that this conversation was coming. It is a bit of dated design, as you say. You mentioned a minute ago, by the way, that Troi carries off the shoulder pads.
Yeah.
Have we on this show ever discussed that?
No.
Like why that's a Romulan thing?
No.
All right. Because I'm trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Because they all know their shoulders aren't like that, right?
Right. Underneath it, you're just a Romulan.
Exactly, right. Like I'm thinking like historically, was there like one Romulan who had like really big shoulders and who also got stuff done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe.
And then everybody's like, man, if I had shoulders that big, I could get stuff done. Well, I could look like I have shoulders that big. And then next thing you know, everybody's got shoulders that big. And that one good Romulan, like, may have had like a moment of like, are they all making fun of me? And then like, his wife or his mom would be like, no, they're not making fun of you. They want to be like you. They're jealous. That's why they're doing this. And now you got a whole race of people like 100 years later, like, why do I do this every day? It's like ties, man. It's like ties, except with shoulder pads. Also, you ever see, can you get like more than 3 Romulans in an elevator, do you think?
Never. And forget about a revolving door.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, they had all those removed after that one Romulan.
Uh-huh. Hey, speaking of stylistic things, Worf, he's got a new hairstyle.
Yeah.
They fought for that over a long time. They wanted to change up the hair so he doesn't have the kind of weird bob anymore.
Yeah, I miss the bob.
Really?
I don't like sensitive ponytail Klingon. Just doesn't work for me.
That is a warrior's ponytail.
This is speaking as a guy who had a ponytail in the 90s. Okay. I get it. I understand it was the time, but I see pictures of myself in that time, of which there are, I believe, 3.
Okay.
I see pictures of myself from that time and I'm like, dude, what were you thinking? And then I see Worf and I'm like, dude, what were you thinking?
Yeah. Oh, so I love this moment where they beam up to Sev, and you've got Riker, Worf, and Deanna.
Riker, Worf, and Crusher.
Oh, Crusher, right. And the first thing Sev says is, "I really need to see your captain," and Riker's like, "Yeah, well, Picard's very busy." I'm like, you know what, dude? You just beamed up a traitor who's been gone for 20 years. Like, there's busy. But then there's busy doing the things that a captain needs to be concerned about. This is one of those things a captain needs to be concerned about.
It actually struck me as kind of odd that there wasn't a whole security party waiting for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
I mean, I know the transporter can eliminate any major threats. So if he came on board with a contagion, it would be wiped out by the transporter. If he came on board, planning on having guns blazing, they'd be deactivating the transporter. Weapon. Right, I get that. But still, I'm a little bit surprised. It's like, oh, you betrayed us, apparently. Although I actually want to talk more about him later.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Riker's like going to treat him with disdain. But, it's Worf, so they're not really going to take security measures exactly.
Right.
Like, he'll be there. It's like, okay, look, see me, you'll have to deal with me. Now go on. Try not to get anything you shouldn't get into, please.
And thank goodness for Sev that the death penalty only extends to people who visit Talos 4. So if he was a traitor, he defected to Romulus, but at least he didn't go like be a TV monkey for the aliens at Talos 4. But good news for Ensign Sev is that if you defect from Starfleet to the Romulan Empire, and then you come back to Starfleet, you can keep the haircut.
Well, he hasn't had time to go see Mott, has he?
Well, that's true. I mean, he had time to get new clothes. He might have thought, well, maybe I'll just not, have the Romulan thing. No. I'm just going to keep the Romulan haircut. It suits me. It frames my face.
He didn't have time to get new clothes. He was ordered to get new clothes.
Well, you would have thought that Riker would say, change that haircut, young man.
Yeah, I don't want to see that either. Right. But he was in love with a woman with a bowl cut in that one episode. Mm-hmm. So,
he was.
He might actually see that and go, all right, lose the uniform, but the haircut's kind of cute. So,
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about why I like it, but I like it. So do what you want with your hair. It's up to you. I actually wondered if, speaking of defectors, so the Romulans who were defecting in the cargo hold, right? Mm-hmm. Shouldn't they have been packed just a little tighter?
Oh, yeah. It's a big box.
It's a big box, right? I mean, they've got the egg crate going, which is good, in case it gets jostled. But I would think smaller, more compact. It seems like that would have been a better way to go. And I'm also wondering, have we ever seen a cargo bay, except for when the Bringloidians set up camp in one, have we ever seen a cargo bay anything like full?
No, they're usually totally empty.
Or 4 boxes. We're taking cargo from point A to point B.
Yeah, or here's that barrel that falls on Worf.
Exactly. And why? Yeah, come to think of it, why do they have stuff? Well, okay, that one was fairly full. I'm actually more thinking about the one in True Q, the one that nearly falls on Riker. Why do they have barrels stacked way up there?
Yeah, see,
because there's nothing on the ground. Oh, that was a shuttle. That was a shuttle bay, though.
Yeah, poor planning.
Man. I'm just remembering far too much now.
Hey, how do you like your Venerine?
Like my men? I don't know what the answer is supposed to be to that question. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I'm very curious. I love food. I'm very curious about the food on Star Trek. And it was hard to tell what was on the Romulan dining table. The Venerine, it could have been fried rice for all I know. I don't know. There were some copper space cups, which I liked. And I'm pretty sure I saw enoki mushrooms on at least a couple of the plates there.
We don't actually know what the Venerine was, though, do we? Because it was obvious that Troi didn't know, and so she grabbed the wrong thing. It was fascinating to me watching that scene, actually. I believe she had no idea which thing to go for. But she had to be ready for, whatever reaction. Mm-hmm. Right? So she grabs the wrong thing, and then the commander's like, you could have at least tasted it. And then she's like, I picked the wrong page in the Choose Your Own Adventure. Now I have to be a jerk.
Right.
As opposed to if she had grabbed the Venerine, then she could be like, oh, yes, it's very good Venerine. I've had worse Venerine in prisons or on prison ships or something like that. Which
love that.
Not really a compliment.
I've smelled worse Venerine.
No, she said I smelled better Venerine on prison ships.
Better,
I'm saying had she actually
Yeah.
grabbed the Venerine, then what's her compliment going to be? Yes, just like my mother used to make. Before I turned her in for being a traitor to the Empire.
That's what you do. Yeah.
So I did have a question, actually. Forgive me. This is a production thing. I was amazed, actually, to not see it in your notes. She's way out of focus in that scene, right?
Yeah, there's a moment where it really shifts.
A moment?
Yeah, well.
A moment would have been nice. Yeah, it's like every shot. Well, I mean, it's because, of course, it's edited back and forth. And that must have really been her best read.
Yeah.
Because that was, or they just didn't know until too late, but they wouldn't have just done one take. So, yeah, because everybody else is totally sharp, but it wasn't just you, people listening.
No.
And now that John's confirmed it wasn't just me either. So, as strong and as tough as the Romulans are, they've got a little bit of an Austin Powers thing going on, but even less. Troi says to Nivek, what's going on? And he says, the less you know about the plan, the better. And she says, what is your plan? And he says, okay, here's the plan. It's like, you fold like a cheap tent. You're the worst. And it was I had to go back and look it up. It's in Austin Powers, where if Austin Powers asks, I think it was the Will Ferrell character, 3 times what his plan is, then the Will Ferrell character has to tell him. And they get in an argument about, I'm going to ask 2 more times. Why don't you just go ahead and tell me? It's like, I'll never tell you. It's like, okay, what's your plan? You couldn't force it out of me. What's your plan? Okay, here it is.
Yeah. Oh, man, I forgot to mention when we were talking about that greeting party meeting Desev in the transporter room, and Worf is just, carrying this grudge about him the whole time. And I love that Desev says to Picard, well, the person who told me this wouldn't have lied. And Worf says, was he a Romulan? just a great, Worf.
You expect Picard to go, okay, first of all, burn. Second, though, come on.
Right.
We're trying to get some information here. Be a little bit nicer. But
Worf, stop it.
But later, let's meet outside because I want to tell you what an awesome burn that was.
Hey, I really like the Romulan disruptors, their hand pistol type. It's just kind of a classic Star Trek looking weapon, but man, they have the worst holsters in the world because the gun's like upside down and it's like stuck out in front of them and it's huge. It's like a big lunchbox strapped to your body. I mean, it's just, they need better placement of their weapons.
You know, what's really weird too is like, so you mentioned earlier, like before we talked about the giant shoulder pads, like you get the thing around the neck, you know, all that stuff. It like on them, it looks great.
Yeah.
But then down into the holster, it looks like macrame.
Right.
Yeah. It's like your grandmother made you a holster and you're like, I have to wear it. And, you know, because my grandmother saw.
Now, it's funny, I have obviously poked a little fun maybe at the Romulans before for doing what they do. They show up and they rattle their swords, but then they don't really do anything. And it's kind of the ultimate Cold War villain. That's the way that they were designed to be. And it occurred to me that there were still more times at the end of this episode where they failed to take advantage of the situation. I mean, just think about it. So Torith didn't try to get the cargo back from the Enterprise. She didn't engage in a fight with them. She didn't try to kill Deanna. She just stood there and like, oh, you're going to get a talking to. And then she didn't bother to do anything after Deanna was beamed away. So it's just all these moments, like in about a 2-minute period where, things are tense. And, thank goodness we're cloaked and we're on our way out of here, because that would have been bad if we had stuck around. And the other thing I'll point out at the end of the episode here, Picard, man, what a guy. He's so hopeful at the end of this that Invec didn't die in vain. He has paved the way for more people to escape. That's a really great sentiment that I do not believe for 1 second. I think Torith is so burned that she will probably make this her mission in life to uproot any and all dissidents in the Empire and rat out any conspirators. And by the way, her chief engineer, who's a sympathizer, that guy is doomed. I hope that he tried to beam himself out along with Deanna or like hopped on an escape pod, because that guy, you do not want to be that guy.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
I had no idea she paid that close attention.
Do not taunt or question the computer.
Well, no, here's the problem. Now we're going to have to cut her in.
No, I don't like that idea at all. Let's talk about Harry's. We are very proud to welcome Harry's as a sponsor to Mission Log. So I've had a chance to use some of the products from Harry's, their shave gel, their 5-bladed razor, and the fantastic ergonomic handle that ships with it. Really, really nice. And I love their aftershave balm. It's one of the nicest products like that I have had the opportunity to use. So what's the deal with Harry's? Well, 2 guys, Jeff and Andy, they were tired of suffering under the tyranny of Big Razor. And they thought, you know what? We don't want to get ripped off having to go to the store and buy razor blades every time we need to buy razor blades. They figured we can do this better and for less money. And that's exactly what they did. By selling directly to you over the internet, Harry's offers their blades at half the price. So about $2 a blade compared to the $4 that you would spend elsewhere. And here's the best part. Harry's wants you to try their products for free. They're so confident that you'll love their blades, they're giving you a trial set as long as you cover $3 for shipping. So here's what you get. The weighted ergonomic razor handle that I just talked about, that I'm a big fan of, 5 precision-engineered blades on that razor blade with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, the rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover. So that's a $13 value for you to try. So here's what you do. Stop messing around and get started shaving with Harry's today by claiming your free trial offer. That's a $13 value for free as long as you cover shipping. And all you need to do is go to harrys.com/Star harrys.com/mission log. So do that part right now, harrys.com/mission log. And thank you again to Harry's for sponsoring this week's show.
So we talked a little bit about Deseb earlier. And I guess I'm wondering what you make of his treatment here as a returning defector. Riker and Worf are pretty much on the same page. You know, this guy's like, stuff we stepped in, can't scrape him off fast enough. Crusher and Picard, I wouldn't say that they're happy about him being there, but they're willing to give him the benefit of some doubt, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that struck me as odd, because he was an ensign. I guess, though, since he was a Starfleet ensign, he could have brought something valuable to the Romulans. I don't know. And I wish we did know. Because if we have a live and let live ethos in, the 24th century, why wouldn't we have a live and let live where you want ethos in the 24th century as well? Because we've got some sort of détente, right? If I'm using that term correctly. We've got an uneasy peace with the Romulans. Any second now, they may shoot us. Oh, don't worry. They're not gonna. Any second now, though, they may shoot us. But with then going to live with them, are you terrible now because you want to go where they are? Or do we have to assume, well, he actually took something with him? He's a traitor, is what Worf argues.
Right.
I guess what I wish we knew more about the conditions under which he left, because we always expect Picard to have a cooler head than anybody else in the room. So that wasn't surprising. And we always expect Crusher to care because she's the doctor. And she's not exactly the mother figure for the whole ship, but she is a motherly person as often as not, if not more often than not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just found myself, I don't want to say conflicted about his treatment, because his treatment really isn't that big a deal in the episode. But I did find myself wondering about different people's attitudes towards him.
Yeah, I think Picard's handling it correctly. Although, like I said, it's just funny to me that Riker would say, well, Picard's very busy. It's like, no, this is the most interesting thing happening on the ship right now. Picard is interested in this. Okay. Well,
Picard's interested in that, but he's not going to let Deseb think for a second that he holds a single card.
Sure. No, of course.
Right? Let's say nothing else is going to be wrong. He's still just an ensign. Now, granted, he's not going to be serving in Starfleet anymore, but he's still just an ensign. So if any ensign walked up to him and said, I need to talk to the captain, I guarantee the first words out of Riker's mouth are, the captain's very busy.
Yeah, right.
All right? So he was really as inoffensive as he could possibly be to the guy. So, I kind of get Riker's like, the captain's a busy person, because Deseb cannot think for a moment that he's done anybody any favors by coming back. As far as Riker is concerned, anyway.
Yeah. But he's also been gone for 20 years. He's also, he might have knowledge that's valuable. He has a story worth investigating,
I don't disagree with you on that. And what I will say is it was Ensign Romulan coming aboard for the first time again.
Sure. Yeah.
This is somebody for whom Riker has absolutely no use. And so if that person says, can I have a glass of water? Riker's going to say no.
Yeah.
I need to speak to the captain. Who do you think you are? Except he's not going to say, who do you think you are? He's going to say, the captain's a very busy man.
Yeah.
But anyway, which is not, forgive me. Riker was Riker. Riker was very Riker in that moment. And even though Riker, of course, the first thing he did was go to the captain and go, hey, Deseb wants to talk to you. Yeah. Because, he knows how important that is, but he's not going to let Deseb know that he, cares at all.
No, I think to the point of your question, though, it's kind of a matter of degrees. So obviously, the best case scenario, you have a relationship like a fellow member of the Federation, where a human wants to go to Vulcan, a Vulcan wants to go to Earth. Fine, no problem. Open about everything, longtime friends, no big deal. And then you've got an uneasy alliance with, say, like the Klingons. Okay, if you like Gach and you want to go serve on a Klingon ship, maybe you're like Riker. Maybe you're part of the exchange program and you can go do that for, okay, that's fine. You can do that. But the Romulans, again, the Romulans were conceived in the 1960s as this kind of stand-in for the Soviet Union. So there's immediately going to be suspicion there. There's immediately going to be this feeling that anybody who would do that might be carrying secrets or doing something specifically to undermine the starting side. So I get it, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, Worf was the one who just, typically Worf, he's like, guy's a traitor. Can I shoot him on sight, sir? That's kind of what you'd expect. But we should be curious about his background. We should be curious about what drove him there, and we should be curious about what's bringing him back. Cautiously curious, if I may say that, just because you don't know. Maybe he's now a double agent or something like that. I think stories of defection are really interesting. And yes, I'm a big fan of The Hunt for Red October, the book and the movie, and certainly the writers of this episode were well aware of that story when they were writing this one. Of course, that book and the movie are played on this very large scale. In real life, I think those stories are fascinating, particularly people who were drawn from the West to the Soviet Union, because sometimes it was like a political protest kind of thing, or they had some sort of ideological draw, this sort of pie in the sky version of what they thought the Soviet system was like. So there are all these stories about why people went there. I mean, Lee Harvey Oswald defected in 1959, stayed for a couple of years. Wasn't for him. I think Kim Philby's story is really interesting. He was a student at Cambridge and recruited by the Soviets, and he sort of bought into what they were selling. And then during World War II, he was an enormously successful double agent for them while working for British intelligence. You may have heard about the Third Man, and they didn't know for a long time. After this breakdown in British intelligence was discovered shortly after the war, the Third Man, the one who they didn't know, that was Kim Philby, and he was still working for British intelligence, and then he was out, and he was working as a journalist for a while. He was under heavy suspicion, but he managed to evade that. And he, for a very long time, lived out from under that cloud of suspicion, but by 1963, when things were getting hot again for him, he had officially defected to Russia. And of course, on top of that, you've got loads of stories about people escaping the Eastern Bloc, between the period of, right after World War II and then up until the fall of the Berlin Wall, those people coming into the West. So, I take a character like Desev, and I'm really kind of fascinated. He's staking his life on his beliefs about moral certainty. That's his description of it. He wanted this new way to live. He wanted this new way to look at himself and the people around him, and this totally misplaced sense of what is right and what's wrong. And there's something really tragic about that, and there's something kind of easy to understand about that appeal. I think that's a very real thing. I think whatever your political leaning is, whatever your impulses are, there's something very appealing about just saying, well, this side is right and that side is wrong. And I don't need any gray area to help me understand anything other than that, than my predisposed supposition that these things are right and these other things are wrong. It's a very simplistic way of looking at the world. Fortunately, shows like Star Trek ask us to look at those gray areas and kind of live and play in those gray areas a bit. So this character like Desev, who is not, like you're saying, not given enough attention here, I think, that he's somebody that I kind of want to read a book about. I don't know if there's a novel about him. Maybe. Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, he can't have, I mean, no offense to the character, but he can't have really come to much if he was able to sort of sneak out, right?
Yeah, well, but who knows? I mean, that's sort of the bigger political picture here. It's like, what are the conditions that allow somebody like him to get away in the first place? What are the conditions that allow somebody like him to get out? You know?
I actually found myself more interested, not so much in the political thing, but in the moral certainty part of it. It wasn't until you were just talking right now that I was thinking about, you hear all these stories about people who are drawn from the West as we record this. And man, I hope, I lose hope, but I hope that 5 years from now, people are like, oh yeah, that was happening, wasn't it? Yeah. You hear all these stories now about people, and not many stories, but every one of the stories becomes like a gigantic thing about people leaving here, or leaving the U.S. or leaving, parts of the West, or trying to leave to join ISIS or ISIL or whatever. And it's got to be that sense of moral certainty. It's got to be that sense of things stink, but tell you what we're going to do. We're going to bring you over here. We're going to put a gun in your hand. You're going to do something, and everything's going to be better.
Yep.
And what's interesting to me is DeSev says, when I was young, that kind of moral certainty really spoke to me. And I get it. I mean, I get that when you're young. I don't really see it changing, though. It almost seems more like, I don't know, you tell me. Is that a thing that happens when you're young, that happens when you're young and that you age out of? Or is that a thing that if you're looking for that when you're young, you're looking for it when you're old as well? Because I love the idea. I love the idea of what he's saying of like, oh, well, I'm older and wiser now, which is neat.
Yeah.
I can't help think, though, I heard an interview with somebody on the BBC last year after the Brexit vote. And it was this guy who was 80 years old. And we know he was 80 because he said on the recording, I'm 80 years old. And he said, I know I'm not going to be around for much longer, but I just want my country to be mine again. And it's like, you're dead by the time this happens. And you just told me you're dead by the time this happens. But he wants what he wants. He wants that sense of certainty. And I'm not knocking that guy, and I'm not even trying to talk about Brexit. I'm saying I'm not sure if it's just when we're younger, we want moral certainty, and when we're older, we mellow a bit. I mean, I'm wondering, do we do that as much, or do we start mellow and end mellow? I don't know. I wasn't satisfied with his whole, that appealed to me before, but now it doesn't so much, because it doesn't look like things are going to go great for him on this side of the wall at this point either.
Yeah, but I don't even know if that's specifically an age thing. I mean, I think you can have a crisis of conscience really at any age,
Yeah.
You talk about people who, from the West will join a terrorist group or something like that, and it's motivated by these feelings of outraged morality, that their sense of morality has been offended, so they're going to go to something that creates a very black and white view of the world. And there is some comfort in that, even if it's horrific by any discernible measure.
Right.
So there are young people who are drawn to that. There are old people who are drawn to that in different ways, looking for moral certainty in other things. But I think that you also hear stories about people at any age also coming out of that, because for whatever outside influences or whatever level of introspection allows them to say, hey, you know what? I can't spend my entire life painting people one way or another and allowing that to affect my misplaced sense of hyperactive morality. So maybe I'm going to try to accept that people are people. So why should it be? Ken?
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, see, I'm getting punchy and kicky, and I'm shouting at you. No, and don't misunderstand. What happened with DeSev, it seemed like they were trying to pass off as a youthful indiscretion. And I'm not saying, so everything's going to be fine now. I'm just saying he said, boy, I was a kid. You know what I mean? And that's sort of the part that I clung to here, was there almost seemed to be a foolishness of youth about what he was saying. But I would just say it's foolishness. And he happened to be young when it happened. Which, I mean, you and I are actually saying the same thing, I think.
Yeah.
It's just the way it was presented in the show. I almost felt like they were, like you'd have to be stupid. Well, you would actually. Not you'd have to be stupid, but you'd have to be young and stupid. I don't know. There was something about the way that was explained. I mean, and maybe he can't separate it from age because he spent 20 years as a Romulan. When he went away, he was a young ensign. When he came back, he looked like, somebody from the Beach Boys. Modern day.
Right.
So like 60, well, actually he'd only be like 40 something, I guess, when this happened. But I mean, maybe he can't take that experience and separate it from the passage of time because those two things are joined.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sitting here watching TV going, well, now hold on a second. You could have been 30 when you left, and then when you were 60. There was something that I actually found interesting about this episode in kind of a weird way. Mm-hmm. You know how we talk about people rising to expectations? Mm-hmm. Like, Barclay is kind of a dope, and then you expect more of him, and gradually, in his case, he starts delivering more to you, right? We talked about it with a number of characters. It was interesting to see it happen with Troi in a weird sort of like dark way.
Oh, yeah.
She's in this situation and it's still all for the good, right? It's all still positive, but she has to act like just like an absolute battle axe is not the right word because that sounds like Harry Mudd's wife. War machine. I mean, she has to become a war machine in this, right? Mm-hmm. And she does. She could have crumbled, but she knows she can't crumble. And so instead, she's like standing up to the commander of a Romulan ship with absolutely no authority to be there. And then standing up to the guy who like brought her aboard, who's been like, this is the only way this is going to work. And she's like, yeah, you know what? You have sucked at this from the beginning. So guess what? We're going to do it my way now. And if you cross me on it, I'm going to tell her you're a traitor. I will have you ejected into space. Said our counselor. Now, luckily, he's not an empath because I really doubt she would have actually had him ejected into space. But like the situation demanded something from her that you would never expect from Troi.
Yeah, right.
And because that expectation is there, she rises to that expectation. It's a little bit like the Gorgons, the power of positive thinking for negative results, except it's like the power of negative actions for positive good. Or something. But really, I just like the fact like you expect something from her that there's no way that should be something that she can deliver. But because the expectation is there, suddenly she can.
Yeah. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Troi in this episode. And I think it's because I know that I'm terrible in high pressure situations. I never have the right thing to say. And then like 3 hours later, I'm like, oh, okay, now I can unpack this. Now I can think of the right way to approach this difficult high pressure situation. I figure Deanna she's in a plum spot for this, right? Because she can read people's minds. So she knows what they're, not reading their minds, but she understands their feelings. She can sense their feelings and say, oh, these people are scared of me. These people are, so that's a really handy thing to have. But I also figure as ship's counselor, she has seen the worst of everything. So she can actually summon up all of what she's seen, what she's experienced over the years and really let loose when she needs to. For all the times that Deanna has been sort of a minor player on Star Trek, I'm now beginning to think that if I had to put together my own crew, she's right there at the top because she can bring it when she needs to bring it.
Not to be overly suspicious, but how do we know that the returning traitor did not just get 3 Romulan spies into the Federation?
If I could just shoulder past you here. No, I can't because the shoulders.
Oh, see?
It's far
with
too.
The funny comedy jokes.
Mm-hmm. Funny comedy jokes, yeah. Mm-hmm. I like to try at least one per episode.
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of people would say, really? You think you could do one per episode? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Hey, it is time for the part of the show where we talk about the messages, morals, and meanings of the show and figure out whether the whole thing stood the test of time. And also whether the episode just holds up as a production and all those sorts of things. Face of the Enemy, John. Does this episode hold up as far as you're concerned?
Okay, let's talk about two ways to look at this. We're going to look at it as a piece of TV production. Does the production hold up? Well, actually, it's shot well. It's acted well. I so cannot get past the interior design of that ship. So that is just going to look dated and horrible no matter what. Okay, but let's talk about this as a slice of Star Trek. Man, what a breath of fresh air. So you and I were so rightly disappointed with Aquiel. And I think most of our listeners, now some disagreed with us and hey, I really like that episode.
I'm sorry, disappointed with what?
It was this episode. See, there was a dog and a space bone.
And the space tongue. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Man,
Yep.
Almost forgot it again.
And if you like that episode, good.
Awesome.
Every episode is a favorite for somebody or a least favorite for somebody. This episode, Face of the Enemy, it feels like we are back on firm Star Trek ground. So, yeah, it's a story that relies on the intricacy of space politics, but how about those core messages? How about the characters? How about everything else? There's a thought at the center of it. And that's what really makes this feel like Star Trek again, not just taking characters and sticking them into some other story. And first and foremost, Marina Sirtis, we both love her anyway. She is wonderful in this. She owns. And yeah, we do start out with her being a victim again, kidnapping and involuntary plastic surgery. But she absolutely owns by the end of this. The A plot and B plot, you don't even really need to call it a B plot. It's just the two halves of the story that are happening in different places, but they dovetail really nicely to reveal more about what's going on. Yeah, I was just really pleased with this. And maybe, again, it's just sort of shrugging off that bad taste in my mouth from last week. But yeah, this was really cool.
I got to say, I think you like it more because of Aquiel. I mean,
okay.
What was what was the one about the Romulan? It was called The Defector, because I believe that was actually how I asked it last time. I said, what was the one about the Defector? And you said, you mean the Defector?
Yeah.
Right. That one about the Defector was actually much more about the defection. That one was much more about all of those politics and all of those struggles and all of those reasons. I mean, that's basically Desev's story. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, he would have different background and different, reasons for coming back and all that stuff. But that's more the Desev story. I think you like this episode so much because so much of season 6 has been hit or miss. And we just came off Aquiel. Because while this does give Marina a lot to do, and that's great. Yeah. And while there are interesting things for us to talk about, this is not the Star Trekiest Star Trek you're going to find. This is not the Defector. This is not, well, nothing is the Corbomite maneuver, but the Corbomite maneuver. But this is not that. I mean, this is not, this has some interesting things to play with. But, this is Hunt for Red October to a certain extent.
And here's the thing. I agree. It's not the Trekkiest of the Trek. And you're right. I coming off of Aquiel to have something that has a core to it really right. does feel good. It really does. But here's the thing. I talked about the thing that I didn't like in Aquiel was that it just felt like throwing characters into a story that they had no reason of being there. And I like it when Star Trek can take another story and make you care about Star Trek in that. So we talked about, Manchurian Candidate. We talked about, taking Sherlock Holmes stories. We talked about repurposing these stories and making them into Star Trek. Now, I admit fully my bias up front. I'm a fan of spy movies and spy stories and stuff like The Hunt for Red October. So this really is something I can geek out about through this episode. So I dig that immediately. That's a great thing anyway. But I feel like the trick here is to take that kind of world, take that kind of premise, and I'm really going to enjoy the cloak and dagger spy stuff about it. But then if you can make me appreciate Star Trek through that as well, then I'm a totally happy camper.
Yeah, don't misunderstand. I do think this episode holds up. I'm just not as excited about it as you are.
Fair enough.
And maybe it's because of the Red October thing, or maybe it's the Aquael thing, or whatever. I don't know what it is, but I mean, I like it. But I would have to temper my excitement compared to yours. Yeah, I put myself at like a 7 or 8.
That's fine. I'm gonna kick it up from an 8 or a 9, probably because of that all new ball chair.
Well, and who doesn't love that? Oh, Lord. Yeah. So my having then just said, I'm not sure it's the Star Trekiest of Star Trek, are there messages here to be considered, sir?
I think there's good stuff to chew on. That speech about moral rigidity was wonderful. You know, it's the message that all the individuals involved in the political argument are far more important than ideology. DeSev says, clarity of purpose is a far more ambiguous matter than I thought in my youth. And we can debate whether you grow into it or grow out of it, but understanding that clarity of purpose is an ambiguous matter is a great thing to really digest and really understand.
Is that something that they should have explored a bit more? Does DeSev sort of get short shrift here because he is really the B plot?
You know, he does, but here's the thing. Take DeSev's story and apply that to the bigger story going on. DeSev is a representation of the change in conscience that's going on. So you've got people like Invec, and you've got Ambassador Spock, and you've got the senator, and you've got all these people who are realizing that they can't be slaves to an ideology. They have to actually do something and act compassionately. So I would have liked more about DeSev. I think his story is interesting, but he's simply an example of what's going on in the minds of these other people. So I'm kind of okay with that. And it's because of that I come back to something that we talked about before. We talked about it in Mirror Mirror, and then other episodes that reflected the same message. Goateed Spock says to Kirk, one man cannot summon the future. And Kirk says, but one man can change the present. And that's what these people in this episode are doing. Realizing where they were wrong, correcting it, and then doing something to make it better for the next person who comes along. Invec embodies that to the ultimate degree, where he has to die to allow other people to live and carry on this more important purpose. You know, but you have to assume that back on Romulus, there are a lot of people, presumably under the tutelage of Ambassador Spock and others who feel the same way that he does, that peace and understanding are far more important than, again, being a slave to this political ideology. I would ask you, Ken, what is so funny about peace, love, and understanding?
We did that joke last week.
We did. All right. So, what else? What else might we find here?
Well, I mean, for me, there was what I talked about last segment about, and it tends to be a recurring theme in Star Trek. It's not in every episode because that would get boring, but, you know, the whole, like, people don't think they can live up to a certain thing, or you don't expect somebody to live up to a certain thing, but then that expectation is thrust upon them, and they do. I mean, it was interesting. I joked earlier about, we put Troi in a uniform, so let's put her in all of them. But I mean, really, it's almost like, and granted, this is only like 2 or 3 episodes later, but it's almost like the writers saw something more in Troi once they could actually see her as something more. Yeah. Put a uniform on her, sit her on the bridge as an officer, as opposed to the, touchy-feely, empath. And then they're able to start thinking about the character as something different, perhaps. This Troi is not going to pick up a flower pot to hit somebody.
Yeah, right.
This Troi will show up for whatever fight you've got. I mean, if it's just, if it's right, and so that's kind of an interesting thing. There was a line that I loved from Commander Torres. The Tal Shiar expect deception, so they will always find it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a fantastic line. I mean, and I feel like you and I actually gave short shrift to everything that Torres had to say, because she's like, she is a tool. The military is a tool of the Romulan Empire. And you know, I think she's about 6 months from defecting as well, except she's Romulan to the core. I think she believes in the Romulan military, and she believes in the ideals of the Romulan Empire, but she has zero faith in the people that are running it at this point. And I love her take on that. And I think it's definitely something that'd be applicable today. Wow, you expect a boogeyman around every corner. You're going to find one. You just are. I mean, that's pretty much what she's saying, I think, at that point as well. I don't think she was saying because you expect deception, people deceive you. I think she was saying you expect the worst, and so you're going to find it because you can't be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because there was another line from Commander Torith that really struck with me. And again, it's not the major theme of the episode, but it really says something about the political reality there. She said, people blame the military for the wars we are asked to fight, but I think it is your kind, Major, that will be the death of us all. And it says something about the split, the separation between the people who are pulling the strings and then just sort of using the military as pieces on a chessboard without thinking through the true cost in people, in resources, etc. Again, not necessarily the true meaning or core of the episode, but it really says something about Commander Torith's state of mind and her background. And I agree with you. I don't think we did enough about her, but that is a great character. And really pretty much anything that she says, you could sort of pick apart.
She may be the most complex character in the whole episode, actually, because she seems to have no, like I said a minute ago, she seems to have no faith in the people that are like moving the pieces on the chessboard.
Yeah.
But she will go where they put her.
Yeah.
She's patriotic, but not unrealistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. She's a really interesting character. Maybe there's a novel about her.
Maybe. So, I mean, it feels like we both feel the same way then about the messages holding up. I mean, to me, it's, now more than ever. I don't know if this is any less relevant than when it came out, maybe more so. I think the messages in here are fantastic. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think see, what's weird is I started off by saying it's not the Star Trekiest of Star Trek, except I just said it wrong that time. But it's like, for some reason, maybe I'm looking for something simpler, or maybe I'm looking for something that's more in-depth on one particular idea, because you're right. Every stone we turn here, we're like, oh, that's worth talking about. Oh, that's worth talking about. Oh, that's worth talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of times I want there to be a giant moral conundrum that everybody is wrestling with, and then we get to decide in the end, how they did with that moral conundrum. And sadly, in this episode, we only get like 4 or 5 moral conundrums. but we don't have that one. We don't have that one. Like, nobody does anything even questionable in this episode, it doesn't seem to me.
Right.
Nobody does anything wrong in this episode. And so there's not a lot of questioning in a way, except, I don't know, maybe as we examine it more, there is. So, yes.
I'm glad we agree. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer, Rod Roddenberry. You can find out more at roddenberry.com. For more exciting Star Trek podcasts, visit Trek FM, that's trek.fm. And for the latest in Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
Next week, Tapestry.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. The joke is on John and Ken. While they are worried about cutting me in on the ad sales, I have been skimming off the top since day one. Numbers. They are what I do. End transmission.